Okay, so here is our first lesson officially and finally for actual geometry. So you'll notice if you're looking at your notes, you see things that you might be like, yeah, okay, I see that's how geometry, that's geometry because there's pictures, right? That's what almost all of our class is going to be is we're going to start with a picture. And then again, we are going to be doing some algebraic things eventually, like solving equations based off what we have in the picture. But before we can do that, we have to talk about some very boring vocabulary. A lot. You'll notice in your notes, you've got a lot of vocabulary up at the top here. We are going to be referring to this as we go through each question. Anytime you guys get stuck on something, if you're doing your homework or looking through the video, don't just ignore all of these words here. Look back to this and see if you can read through it and go, oh, okay, I can see what I need to do there, or how that helps me out. So we're going to come back to all this. We're going to refer to it, like I said, as we go through the examples. So example 1 says name the point. So as I said, we're going to talk through a lot of vocabulary. There we go. So let's talk about naming a point, since that is our first example here. And notice it says naming a point. So a point has no dimension. What that means is that it just exists. Yeah, if I literally hit that atom, that's a point. That atom right there of air. Yeah. We'll talk about what things that have dimensions in just a second, but it's usually represented by a small dot. That should be a T there. So this is a point, and it has a letter next to it usually. So this point, we would call it as point A. You can call it PTA or literally just point A. That's how we can name that. Yeah. So we see it as a dot with a letter. We'd call that point A. So looking at this one, we need to name this point. It's a dot with a V next to it. I named this one here point A. That's the name of that dot. What would we name this point here? Point V. Literally, if I asked you to name this point, we would call it point V. That's the answer, yeah? And the reason why we have to understand that is because if I tell you, hey, look at point V, you have to know where to look, right? And that means this specific dot here. Good, going on to the next one. So now it says name the line. So let's look back to, again, our vocabulary about what it tells us to do about naming a line. So a couple things to underline in here. A line has one dimension. So you guys know 3D means 3 dimension. If you didn't know that, when movies are 3D, that means 3 dimensions. Dimensions means the way we can measure things and how many ways we can measure things. So a point is just a dot. I can't really measure it. It doesn't quite work out that way. So that's why we say a point has no dimension. But a line has one dimension because I can measure its length. That I can measure it one way. So we call that one dimensional. Yeah, one direction that I can measure it in. It is represented by a straight line with 2 arrowheads. Also underline that, please, in your vocabulary, because if it doesn't have 2 arrowheads, we don't call it a line. So again, it has to have 2 arrowheads to call it a line. That indicates that the line extends without end in 2 directions. This is what's hard about a lot of geometry, is that the concept of infinity is very weird to us. We can go, oh yeah, infinity, that goes on forever and ever and it never ends. But we can't actually see that. So these arrows on the end right here indicate to us that that line is going to shoot off in both directions forever and ever and ever and ever and never ever end. We obviously can't draw that on a piece of paper, which is finite. So you have to understand that if I have those arrows there, it means it goes on and on forever, even though we can't draw it that way. So it says a line is named by using 2 points and the line symbol. This is kind of weird here. Let me check something. Why does this look so funky? Does it look right there? Okay, so for example here, I should fill it in right here. 2 points in the line symbol. So we see that point A and point B are our points that are on this line. So I can name this AB with the line symbol, which what that means is just over the top, there's a little baby line. meaning I put 2 arrows on the end. So this line right here, we can call line AB with this little symbol over the top. That is the line symbol, yeah? Or sometimes they will give a little lowercase cursive letter. This right here is a cursive L for line typically. And we can just call it line L if that letter is there. Sometimes it's not though. So most of the time you're gonna have to name it by 2 points and then a little mini line drawn over the top. So let's go ahead and look back to example 2. We want to name the line. Now notice there are 3 points on this line. Yeah, we know it's a line. Why? What tells us this has to be a line? The 2 arrowheads indicate to me that this is a line going on forever and ever and ever. So I actually have a lot of options for ways to name this line. I'm going to give you one, and then I want you to come up with another. So I can choose to name this line BG because those 2 points are on the line. All I have to be careful about is that I draw a little mini line over the top. And that is one way to name this line. There are several other ways you can name this line. I want you to give me at least 1 or 2. Go ahead and try it. Okay, so I could name this AG because both A and G are on the line. I could also name this AB, as well as I could name this, I could flip these letters as well, and that would also work. So I could do GB, I could do GA, and I could do BA. Any of these are correct because any of those would tell you that's the line we're looking at. So as long as it indicates to you exactly what line we need, you can use it. So any of these are proper answers. I think that's all possible ones. You do not have to go, and I'm sorry, this is also wrong. BAG is incorrect. It's unnecessary. It's not necessarily incorrect. It's really just unnecessary because we only need 2 points because 2 points make a line. I don't need 3 points to make a line. For example, again here, I can draw a line through these 2 points, yeah? If I have a 3rd point in the middle here, I don't need it to be able to draw a line. You only need 2 points for a line. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So notice now we are talking about line segments. So that is different than a line. Let's look back to our vocabulary about what it says about a line segment. So here it says line segment. Let's look at the definition here. A line segment consists of the endpoints A, B, and all the points that are between A and B. So notice there's no arrows here. Yeah, it's just 2 dots, not like a line with arrows on the end. We call this a line segment because if I had a line that goes on forever and ever and ever, and I just took scissors and went and snipped off a segment, it'd be like a little piece of string. So a line segment is finite. It ends and starts, whereas a line doesn't. It just goes on and on and on forever. So it's similar to how we name a line. We use both endpoints, yeah, or any 2 points that are on it. That actually works as well. Sorry, no, we need to use, sorry, let me clarify that. We need the endpoints, and I will clarify that here. And the segment symbol is the little line on top, just like how this is a line symbol because it's a little mini line. This is a little mini segment. It has no arrows. So let's go ahead and look back to example 3. Now, as I meant to clarify here, that should be a capital P. Good Lord, these things have issues. P-I-G, there we go. Name the line segments. Now, there are several segments I can name on this picture. For example, let's name this one here. If I want to talk about just that one, just that little piece there, how can I name that? What are its endpoints? Well, its endpoints are P and I, and if I want to talk about it like it's a line segment, I draw a little mini line segment on top, no arrows. But say instead I want to talk about, just this is PI here. Say instead I want to talk about all of this. How would I name that one, or how could I name that one? Since I'm talking about different endpoints. That one would be named PG with a little line segment on top, or I'm not going to say this every time, guys, just get used to it. GP. You can flip the letters. That's okay. For a line segment, I should say, and a line, you can flip the letters. Same thing here. This could be IP. There's one more line segment we can talk about. We've labeled this one. We've labeled the whole thing. What's one more line segment you can talk about here? IG, or again, GI is the same thing. So you got to be very careful though, because all of these talk about different line segments. You have to use the endpoints of the line segment that you want. Whereas on a line, because it just goes on and on and on forever, I can use any number of points that are on it. But if I'm talking about a line segment, I specifically need the endpoints of what I'm talking about. So PI and IG are different because they're different snippets. If I were to cut them, they'd be different lengths. Yeah. Let's go ahead and keep going here. So now we're talking about rays. So this is the third type of line-ish thing. Again, when we say line in geometry, we mean it goes on and on forever. When we say line segment, that means a little snippet of a line. When we say ray here, that is another different thing. So let's look back. Naming a ray. A ray consists of the initial point, a starting point, and then it shoots off all the points in one direction. Sorry for this weird stuff here. I accidentally snipped that. Here's the actual, it's right there. Yeah, there's our ray. So notice a ray has one arrow. Yes, only one arrow. Think about it like a ray gun. If I'm standing here at point A, and I've got a ray gun, and I go, it only shoots off in one direction, yeah? The ray is not going behind me, so I'm the starting point here at A, it shoots off towards B, I've killed B, and then it's a ray gun. So it just keeps going and going and going forever and ever and ever through B. Now, little things here. Again, we have some flexibility for how to name a line segment or a line, but for a ray, the end point must come first because we have to know what is the end point. Which one of these points does not get an arrow? So we would name this one specifically, we'd only be able to name it AB, and then draw a little mini ray over the top. Again, we have a little mini line segment here. We've got a little mini line here. Here's our 3 different ways to name these things. And again, notice that A is the starting point, which is why there's no arrow over here. And B is where it shoots off to. So that's why the arrow is over there. I cannot call this BA because B is not the starting point. A is. So it's got to line up. This is incorrect. So let's go back here. Name the rays of the angle. So we actually have 2 rays here. I'm going to name one, and then you get to name the other. This is our first ray. It starts here at A and then shoots off towards M. So I have to name this AM because A is the starting point, shoots off towards M, and then draw a little mini ray over top. Once again, I cannot name this MA with my ray here. It does not start at M. A is the guy holding the gun, it shoots off towards M. So what's our other ray then? How would we name this one? Starting at A, shooting off towards N. Go ahead and write that down. Starting at A, shooting off toward N. And there's my little ray gun out on the top. So it's very important that we understand the difference between these 3 things, a line segment, and a, ray. Those 3 look like they're named very similarly, The difference is in what goes on the top of them. A little mini line, a little mini line segment, or a little mini ray. Okay, we're at the last thing here. I know this is a lot of vocabulary, but at least it's easy, right? This stuff is super important for us to get up front. We get to the harder stuff after we've gotten this down. So name the angles. So looking back here, naming an angle. An angle consists of two rays with the same endpoint. So it's like C is holding two guns. And he's like shooting off two guys. It creates an angle, right? The endpoint is called the vertex, or this endpoint here. So this would be the vertex. We can just name it by using our angle symbol and the vertex. So I can call this angle C. I cannot call it angle A because A is not the vertex. Again, the vertex is where they touch. I cannot call this A because that's not where my little two rays touch. So I could call it angle C, or sometimes we have to do this, and you'll see this actually here. I can call it by three letters with the middle letter being the vertex. So I can call this ACT, angle ACT, or TCA. C has to go in the middle because that tells us where our angle's vertex is at, and that becomes very important to us later. Yeah, where that vertex is at. So last question here. I know this one's a little bit longer. We're going to name the angles. So there's lots of options. There's lots of angles I can talk about. It's like B's got 3-ray guns somehow. He goes pew, pew, pew. Yeah. We can talk about this individual angle here. We can talk about this individual angle here. Or we can talk about the whole big angle. Notice that all angles start at B. Now, I cannot, in this picture, go angle B because I don't know what you're talking about. It could be this angle. It could be this angle. It could be this whole thing. Yeah? I can only call it by a letter like that if there's just one angle here, right? If you say angle C, I'm like, yeah, I know what you're talking about because that's angle C. There's no other choice. Here, though, I cannot call this angle B because there's too many angles coming off point B. So we have to name things by 3 letters. So I'm going to give you one. I'm going to choose to name this angle right here. I'm going to say angle, and then 3 letters with the B being in the middle. I to B to T. I can also call that angle the reverse. I can go T to B to I. But B has to be in the middle because that's the vertex. I want you to go ahead and now name this angle. Doesn't matter which direction you do it as long as B is in the middle. How do we name that angle? Well, that one I can go EBT, angle EBT, or TBE. There is one more angle we can name, though, and again, that is the entire angle, the big boy. So write down both ways we can name that angle, again with B being in the center. Okay, we have IBE, angle, where'd you go? Angle IBE, or once again, we can flip that around, angle EBI. Again, I cannot call any of these angles, for example, TEB. I could not do that because that angle does not exist in this picture. If I were to try to trace it, I have to go from T to E to B, and that would be this. T to E to B. That angle is not drawn in the picture. I'm not tracing over what's already there. I'm having to draw this extra thing here. So be very careful. Wherever our vertex is at, that has to go in the middle. Okay, so again, I know this first lesson was kind of a lot of vocab, but the homework is going to be very easy. It's going to be just practicing these naming conventions. because it's so important that we have this before we can move on to actually doing geometry problems. We got to have a common language first.